The subject of this video, while not very original, is one for which a lot of people are seeking a good, reliable answer. Of course, there are a lot of other people out there eagerly wanting to answer that question. It's just that I think most people, even those preaching the various formulas for salvation, are not fully convinced that they know the answer either. In some churches, members of the congregation are encouraged to go out and do what they call witnessing, where they try to convert other people to whatever it is that they believe. But even in those churches, if you ask 10 members of the congregation what anyone needs to do to be saved, to go to heaven, to have eternal life, most of them would admit that they don't really know exactly what the minimal requirements are. And it's not much better with ministers either. Consequently, even in the most supposedly evangelical churches, it still really boils down to getting them into the organization, in the hope that the organization, including its various seminaries, will clear up what individual members and individual pastors don't really understand themselves. I don't want to be a part of all that, and so that is why I thought it would be a good idea to produce this video. A video which makes it so clear and so simple that you can walk away from viewing it and you will be able to tell others with confidence and without notes what it takes to be saved, to be a Christian, to go to heaven, to gain salvation, or whatever else you want to call it. So here goes. First, you really do need to sweep the table clear of all the other assumptions you have about what it means to be a Christian. Let's just start out as lost souls, wandering around the planet, not really sure why we are here, how we got here, or what happens, if anything, after we die. We can see that people everywhere eventually die, but beyond that, it's all a mystery. Something in the way we were made just naturally assumes that this world we live in and all of the people in it were all made by some kind of incredible intelligence, and that it was all made for a purpose. That's more or less programmed into our genes. As sure as we would come up with theories if we found a buried treasure in our backyard, we have theories about how we got here. We know enough just from studying history and from looking around the real world as it is today that a lot of people have come up with a lot of different explanations for all of this. Sometimes it includes a promise of an afterlife, a life that goes on even after we die. On top of that, most cultures come up with some concept of an intelligent creator as well, a god of some sort who made it all. This idea of maybe being able to return to life after dying has intrigued many people throughout human history, but there just doesn't seem to be convincing or overwhelming evidence of it. It all depends on who you believe. And even before we reach the question of who to believe, we have to face the possibility that there is no explanation at all. The possibility that all our talk about an afterlife is just so much wishful thinking. So that is where I want to start. I'm saying this because most of my audience is composed of people who profess to be Christians, and I think that we religious people rush too quickly into assumptions that we have had pumped into us almost from birth. Assumptions about who is going to be saved and about who is not. We jump into those kind of arguments before we've even had a chance to consider that maybe no one is going to be saved. And yet that seems to be the natural place to start. Jesus Christ himself was born into a religion and a culture which was not at all certain that there is an afterlife. There is, in the Gospels, a discussion between Jesus and some Jewish religious leaders who were arguing that there is no afterlife, and Jesus took the position that there is. The idea of there being such a thing as eternal life is probably the most fundamental aspect of what we call the Gospel, or the good news. Jesus said that he had come not only to testify to the fact that eternal life is a possibility, but also to show people how to get it. Now, guess what? I have barely introduced my subject, and already, in that last statement from me, I have preached to you the gospel. It's that simple. although I'll have more to say to fill this out. Nevertheless, what I said was that Jesus came not only to testify to the fact that eternal life is a possibility, which is definitely good news if he is right, but Jesus also came to show people how to obtain that same eternal life. That is the gospel. Pretty much as Jesus preached it, everything else flows from that. Jesus came to show people how to have eternal life. Now, you are free to believe it or not to believe it. Much will depend on your understanding of everything else that Jesus said. Either he will, by the things that he has said, convince you that he really has been sent by God to show us how we can live forever, or you will be convinced that he more or less made it up, or maybe that some of his followers made it up and put those words into his mouth, along with all the other things that he has recorded as having said. But you won't know until you listen to him, and that is what people are simply not doing. Consider what has been happening for centuries. Religious leaders everywhere, the ones who claim to be Christian religious leaders, are telling people that we can have eternal life at the same time that they are telling us that the way to get that eternal life is not to listen to Jesus. They have different ways of going about it, but the bottom line is that they never tell us to listen to Jesus. In the Catholic Church, they just tell you that it's all too complicated. You need to stay away from the Bible and just leave it to the experts to tell you what you need to do to get to heaven. Having said that, they then tell you you have to join their church, eat a little wafer once a week if it's not too inconvenient, and give the right responses when going through some stuff printed in what they call a prayer book. You know, that sort of thing. Of course, there are a few other rituals, but if you push them, they'll even tell you that the things that I've already listed can be overlooked for some people and you can still make it into heaven, thus leaving the hundreds of millions of Catholics pretty confused about what the minimal requirement is. But the main thing, and the most tragic thing, is that they never tell you, just listen to Jesus and do what he says. Sadly, it's not much better with the Protestants. For many, the magic is in the water, sprinkled on your head as a baby or dunked in it as an adult. You might be asked to recite certain statements of faith or to repeat a ritual prayer line for line after one of them gives you the prompts. But, like I said at the start, most of you who have been through those rituals don't feel qualified to lead someone else through them step by step either, because they just don't seem all that convincing. But, getting back to my main point, what they all leave out is listening to Jesus and believing what he said, which is the real answer to the question of, what must I do to have eternal life? You see, none of the rituals from any of these denominations bear more than an extremely spurious connection with anything that Jesus ever said or did. Neither do they show you, me, or anyone else anywhere that Jesus ever said the things that they are telling us. So that's why I come back to my super simple explanation of what it takes to go to heaven. Listen to Jesus, and then decide whether or not you believe him. Jesus says that if you believe him, he will give you eternal life. What each of those religious leaders is saying is this: if you believe me, I will give you eternal life. But of course, they aren't Jesus. So you really have to weigh up their credentials against the credentials that Jesus offers. I'm certain that if you ever took the time to listen to Jesus yourself, then it would not be hard at all to see that they have not listened to him and that they are no match for him. Have you got it clear what you really do need to do for salvation? Do you understand that it's as easy as listening to Jesus and then believing him when he says that he will give eternal life to all those who believe him? See, if no one has ever told you that, then you have never heard the gospel. If you are not, or if anyone else is not preaching that, then neither you nor they are preaching the gospel. Jesus said at one stage, when this gospel is preached in all the world, then the end will come. Now, there are many people in every country in the world today saying that they have preached the gospel, but they haven't, and the end has not yet come. They have not told the world to listen to Jesus, and they have not urged people to decide whether they believe Jesus when he says those things or not. The Great Commission, as it is called, tells all followers of Jesus to go into all the world, teaching people to obey everything that Jesus told us to do. That is not happening. We are not even doing what he told us to do ourselves, much less telling other people to do it. This gospel that Jesus preached has not been preached hardly anywhere, but it's the only gospel that will save you. People will take isolated proof texts from various places in the Bible to justify another gospel, one that Jesus did not preach, but all of these other gospels are distortions. And one of the most common sleight of hands that they pull is when they say that you just have to say that you are saved and you are saved. But most of the verses they use to promote that myth actually have the word faith or believe in them, but they ignore those two very similar words. You see, Jesus said that faith is like a mustard seed. It's very tiny in itself, and yet it is capable of growing into a very big plant. Of course, because it is so small, these clever imposters assume they can just skip right over it. No one will miss it if they say nothing about believing Jesus. They never. Do you hear me? Never. I know that's a strong word, but really the exceptions are so exceptional, like 1 in a million, that it's hardly worth mentioning. And I want you to think about that. They virtually never tell you to listen to the things Jesus said in the 4 Gospels, and then decide whether you believe him. But none of their proof texts work once people hear that you have to listen to and believe Jesus in order to be saved. As Paul said in the 10th chapter of his letter to the church in Rome, how can they believe in him from whom they have not heard? They take a verse like Ephesians 2 verse 8, and all you ever hear of it is this: by grace are you saved. Now, occasionally, they'll say the next 2 words, but they rarely mention them further. Why? Because faith is, in the eyes of the people preaching this false gospel, worthless. A speck the size of a mustard seed, which can easily be skipped over. But even there, in their favorite proof text, the word is there. By grace are you saved through faith. You see, salvation is absolutely and totally impossible without faith. And how can you have faith in someone you have never listened to? In the 11th chapter of the letter to the Hebrews, it says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. So what does it take to please God? Talk about how it doesn't take anything? No, it takes faith. What does it take to get to heaven? It takes faith in Jesus. Not faith in a name, not faith in some imaginary man whom you've never met, but faith in the real Jesus, the historical Jesus of the 4 Gospels. Without listening to him and then exercising faith in what he has said, it is impossible to please God. You see, that same Jesus that you read about in the Bible does really have the power to offer eternal life, eternal salvation, in heaven, in the presence of God. He is just waiting for someone to listen to him. Jesus said, it is an extremely narrow road, and very few people are going to even take the time to listen to him, much less believe him. Are you one of those rare people who will listen and believe? Are you prepared to read through the 4 Gospels, asking yourself after each chapter whether you believe what Jesus said in that chapter? Whether you are prepared to follow him just as those first disciples did? If you haven't done that yet, then it's quite likely that you are not yet a Christian. I want you to be able to introduce other people to Jesus after watching this video, but first, I probably need to introduce you to him. Now, I don't have the time on this channel to go through everything that Jesus taught, but if you will get a Bible, just about any translation you like, and locate the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That is where you will be able to read for yourself the things that Jesus said, not only about his own experience of life with the creator of the universe, someone he calls his Father, but also about what he requires of his followers. Please read them today and decide. Your eternal destiny is hanging on the outcome of that encounter with the only begotten Son of God. I look forward to hearing how it goes. Now, I don't expect many people to even open their Bibles after watching this video, and most who do will close it again pretty quickly when they hear what Jesus actually said. But if you are an exception, please write to me at the address on screen and tell me about it. And if you'd like to link up with others who have seen their lives transformed through faith in and obedience to the teachings of Jesus, just let me know what country you come from, and I'll see what I can do to put you in touch with someone from your general area of the world. God bless you. Oh, and now that you know what it takes to get eternal life, please do all that you can to point that out to others as well. You'll be preaching the gospel just by doing that, which is just one more of the things that Jesus told us to do if we believe what he has said. Thanks for listening.